The leaves of Lorien are burning, and the stars do not dare to shine. Smoke crawls like a living thing beneath the golden boughs as elven voices rise in terror and awe. For in the heart of the forest, something vast and bright and terrible has awakened. Upon a green hill above the silver river, a woman stands bathed in raw white fire, her eyes like twin storms. In her open palm lies a small circle of gold, and every shadow in Middle-earth seems to lean toward it, listening. For a moment she hesitates. Then Galadriel of the Noldor closes her hand around the one ring, and the world shudders. If this fracture in the Third Age grips you, tap like to help others find it, and tell us in the comments what realm of Middle-earth you'd swear to defend in a world ruled by an elven queen. Subscribe if you'd walk further down these darker paths with us. In another telling, the ring passes from the Shire to Rivendell, from Rivendell to Lorien, and there it is refused. In this one, the air itself seems to hold its breath as Frodo Baggins, weary and trembling, looks up into the face of the Lady of the Wood. The mirror has just shown him a world enslaved, the Shire aflame, hobbits driven in chains, the eye of Sauron sweeping ceaselessly over cloud and mountain. Behind that vision is the steady weight of the ring against his chest, its constant whisper. There is no other way, do you not see? Galadriel's voice is soft, but the chamber hums with some deeper resonance. Lantern light glints on her hair like embers in snow. In all lands, love is now mingled with grief. You cannot bear this burden. Frodo's reply is little more than a breath, then take it. The words hang between them like a doom pronounced. In the true history, the ring-bearer speaks in despair, but not in surrender, and Galadriel passes the test she has awaited for an age. She refuses. She remains herself. Here, something small is different, and that difference breaks the world. Frodo's hand shakes as he pulls the chain over his head. The ring swings, catching the light, impossibly bright. For an instant, it is just gold. Then, it is everything. Galadriel looks at it, truly looks, as one who knew the crafts of Feanor and the secrets of Aulës fires. She feels its song, subtle and sweet, offering not domination, not yet, but power to heal, to preserve, to make the fading world shine again. There is another presence in the chamber, vast and cool, Nenya, the ring of water, upon her finger. It has long held back decay in these woods, like a hand pressed against the slow bleeding of time. Now, in the shadows, something else presses back. Lady, Samwise Gamgee whispers, his eyes wide as saucers, don't take it. Please don't. He is nothing to her, this gardener from a far green land she has never seen. Or he should be nothing, a mote of dust in the storm of the world. Yet his voice is the only sound that feels like fresh air. Galadriel's hands are still. Her mind is not. In an instant sharper than any sword, she sees paths branching, refuse the ring and pass west. A memory and a sigh in the tales of men, or take it, and with one terrible choice, seize the chance denied to the Eldar since the breaking of Thangorodrim. She sees Dol Guldur burning beneath white flame. She sees Barad-dûr falling as its own shadows devour it. She sees the Shire untouched, golden in the sun, the hobbit curling in her mirror, never born. Instead of a dark lord, you would have a queen, she had said a moment earlier, half in prophecy, half in warning. Not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night. It was a vision to frighten a halfling and remind herself what lies on the other side of desire. Now, in the silence after Sam's plea, she tastes it again. What if beauty and terror is exactly what Middle-earth requires? Frodo's hand wavers. The ring gleams. Galadriel reaches out. Her fingers close upon the gold. There is no thunderclap, no crack in the sky. Yet every leaf in Lorien twists on its stem as if turned by an unseen wind. The song of the river falters, then rises, altered. Far above, beyond sight, the stars of Varda tremble. Nenya screams, not in sound, but in her bones. The elven ring flares on her hand, its hidden power blazing forth as if in protest. The one flares back, gold and white, domination and preservation. For one breathless moment, the two forces meet like storm fronts colliding. In the depths of Dol Guldur, a wraith in a tattered robe falls to its knees without knowing why. In Barad-dûr, the eye of Sauron narrows, its attention spearing across mountains and leagues of air. He feels it, the touch of his own work, the pattern of his malice, disturbed, bent, claimed, not by him. Galadriel staggers, her eyes flaring with light that is not her own. Her hand spasms as the ring sears into the tender flesh beneath her fingers. Frodo cries out. The chamber swims. Sam lurches forward as if he might physically tear the ring away from a being older than his race's written memory. Haldir grips his arm with sudden iron strength, eyes never leaving his lady. Sam! Frodo gasps, pulling him back. Wait! Galadriel straightens. For a heartbeat, she is much as she was before, tall, pale, grave. Then the light in the room bends around her as if she were the axis of some great wheel. Her hair lifts and spreads like a river in a sudden current. Her eyes widen, the green flecked now with molten gold. Every other ring in Middle-earth answers the call. In Rivendell, Vilya blazes on Elrond's hand, its unseen aura leaping like blue flame. The Lord of Imladris breaks off mid-sentence in council, his breath catching as if an ice-cold hand has seized his heart. Do you feel it? Gandalf murmurs, though he needs no answer. In the ruins of Khazad-dûm, deep beyond light, a slender golden band on the finger of a withered dwarf king snaps like brittle wire, sending a shock through stone and stale air. Far away in the east, another dwarf drops his pick and screams as a ring of power burns to ash on his hand. The nine tremble, pulling at their masters like hounds at the leash. The one has been claimed. Power floods Galadriel like a river that has broken every bank. She feels Sauron's works like a map etched in fire, every tower, every pit, every twisting staircase in Barad-dûr. She feels the Nazgûl, weary, hollow, shackled wills floating in the black sea of the Dark Lord's mind. She feels his armies massing in the east, the drums in the deep places of the world, and she feels him. Sauron is a presence of vast and consuming heat, forged in the furnaces of Angband, tempered in cruelty and fear. He turns his gaze upon her incredulous, then enraged. Who dares? Galadriel meets that fury like a cliff meets the ocean. She has looked upon Morgoth himself in the days before the moon. She has seen the light of the two trees. She has stood in the ruins of Doriath and walked the ice of the Helcaraxe. She is not some petty chieftain to burn in his glance. You will not have this world, she whispers, though no one in the chamber can hear the words. They are not for mortal ears. Their wills clash. There is no flash, no visible struggle. Frodo sees only the lady standing very still, her hair shifting as if in wind that is not there. Yet all of Middle-earth feels it in some wordless way. Animals go silent. Fires gutter. Children wake sobbing without knowing why. On a blasted plain in Mordor, beneath a sallow sky, an orc captain looks up from berating his troops as the air grows heavy. His ears ring. The distant mountain seems to lean. In Osgiliath's rubble, Faramir, son of Denethor, lifts his head from his maps, a vague sense of pressure behind his eyes. For a moment, he thinks he glimpses the white tree, not dead, but blazing. In Isengard, Saruman the White pauses at a palantir, hand halfway to its dark glass. He closes his eyes, feeling a tremor in the fabric of the world. This is no work of Sauron. This is different, he breathes. For the first time in long years, something like doubt flickers behind his ambition. Back in Lothlorien, Galadriel pushes. Nenya joins the battle unbidden, its power of preservation lashing itself to the wilder strength of the One. What Sauron built to command, she bends to shelter. Where he sought to enslave, she seeks to bind in protection. The ring twists in her grip, its nature resisting. It was made to dominate, not to heal. Yet the smithing of the Noldor was never a trifling thing, and Galadriel's will is a white-hot spear. Sauron lunges, pouring fury and malice down the invisible channels that link him to the ring. He seeks to seize her mind, as he has seized so many others, to drag her soul into his furnace and hammer it into obedience. He finds no purchase. There is an old, cool hardness in her, born of grief and exile and centuries of refusing despair. It does not yield. On the slopes of Orodruin, the mountain grumbles, ash plumes writhing. Inside Barad-dûr, cracks appear in high, windowless halls, dust drifting from stone carved by slave and fire. For a time, that might be seconds or a small eternity. No one moves in the chamber in Lorien. Sam clutches Frodo's sleeve. Frodo's lips move soundlessly, as if praying, though he has never learned the forms men use for such things. Then, very slowly, the golden light in Galadriel's eyes recedes, leaving only a lingering glimmer. She breathes. The world does not end. "Lady!" Haldir ventures, his voice rough. "My lady?" She turns toward Frodo and Sam, and in that turning the fate of the Third Age realigns. The test, she says quietly, as if to herself, is not to refuse power. It is to wield it rightly. Frodo stares, his face drained of color. "What have you done?" Across the world Sauron reels. He has not been overthrown. His realms have not fallen, but something profound has shifted in the arrangement of power. The ring answers another now. He is no longer the only will steering its vast potential. In the deep fire of his being, rage burns cold and sharp. So be it. Two can play this game. He begins at once to redraw his plans. In Lorien, Galadriel is already doing the same. Her mind runs along newly opened roads. With the One Ring, she can look across leagues as easily as across a small glade. She sees the slow mustering of orcs in Mordor, the strange preparations in Isengard, the fretting of men in Minas Tirith and Rohan. She also sees something that stabs her more cruelly than any blade, the slow waning of all that is fair and free, the fields left untilled because there are not enough hands, the ruins no one has the strength to rebuild, the small hopes of lesser folk crushed between warring powers. She could end so much of it. Not at once, not with a single gesture. Even with the ring, there are limits. But given time, years, perhaps decades, she could remake Arda as a place where sorrow is rare and fading a memory. If she takes up that burden fully, there will be no going back. The Valar will not welcome her home with open arms when at last she wearies. Perhaps they never would have. She looks at Frodo. He is staring at her hand, where the glint of gold shows beneath her fingers. There is horror in his eyes, but also something more complex, a hollow, aching relief. The burden that was choking him is gone. "I have failed," he whispers. "No," Galadriel says, "you have given away what no one should be asked to bear. That is another kind of courage." Sam is less philosophical. "You give that back," he burst out. "You give that back to Mr. Frodo right now. You ain't no better than him if you—" His voice cracks. The room is suddenly too large for the little hobbit's fury, and yet it fills it. For the first time since she closed her hand on the ring, Galadriel smiles. It is not the distant, luminous smile of an elder being amused by a child. It is something sharper and sadder. "I am not better," she says, "but I am different, and I have waited too long to watch another dark hand close over this world." She turns away, the decision already made. Elrond must be warned, she says, and Mithrandir, if he still lives. The counsels of the wise must be swift now. Speak no word of this beyond these halls. Her eyes rest on Frodo and Sam, considering. "You will return to the Fellowship," she continues, "and you will tell them this. The ring is no longer a wandering peril. It has found a keeper." Frodo swallows. "And Strider?" he asks, because some part of him still orients by the ranger's calm, by the quiet strength that had steadied him on wild roads. What do I tell him? Galadriel's gaze turns inward for a heartbeat. She sees Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Isildur's heir, walking the shadows between chieftain and king. She sees him with a broken sword reforged, the hope of men in his step. She also sees him as she has always seen him, a mortal with all the stubborn, beautiful, ephemeral fire that word entails. "Tell him," she says slowly, "that the choice laid on his house has been taken up by another. Isildur's bane is no longer his burden. The kindling of the West will not depend upon the doom of one man." She does not add, "Tell him his path narrows to a crown or a grave, unweighted by this older shadow." She does not yet know which of those fates she will allow. The Fellowship leaves Lorien bearing gifts and unease. They do not speak openly of what occurred in the heart of the Golden Wood, but it sits among them like a silent traveler. Boromir feels it as an ache, like a battle not fought. The ring, so close to his grasp, vanished into the hands of someone else, someone who can actually use it, a traitorous part of him thinks. Legolas feels the change as a subtle shift in the forest's song. The leaves of Lorien seem brighter, the shadows deeper. He finds Galadriel's farewell inflected with a new weight, a new distance, as if a gulf has opened between her and all other living things. Aragorn says little. On the day they depart, he stands alone for a time on the shore, looking back at Coras Galadon rising among the trees. The white towers glimmer like stars caught in branches. He remembers the flash of something on Galadriel's hand when she clasped his own, something more than Nenya's already hushed gleam. He remembers the way his heart lurched. "What has been done?" he murmurs to the empty air. No answer comes, save the soft lap of water against the boats. But across Middle-earth, answers are already unfolding. In Rivendell, Elrond paces the Hall of Fire long after the last song has ended. Gandalf sits in a high window, pipe forgotten in his hand, gray brows drawn together. "She has it," Elrond says at last, breaking a silence heavy as stone. "I feel its echo in Villia more strongly with every passing hour. Galadriel has taken the one." Gandalf exhales, smoke curling like thought. "I feared as much," he replies, "or hoped, depending on which part of me you ask." Elrond stops. "You hoped? There is no safe road left in this age," Gandalf says, "only roads that end in different shadows. Sauron has grown too strong. If the ring had remained with Frodo, do you truly believe he would have walked into Mordor and cast it into the fire with Nazgul and armies and Saurons will bent upon him?" Elrond closes his eyes, old pain stirring, the memory of a dark plain, of Isildur holding up that same ring, its fire reflected in his eyes. "We trusted a weak thing once before," he says, We know how that ends. We trusted pride, Gandalf answers quietly. We trusted a man who believed he could master what he held. Frodo does not wish to master anything. He would have given it up to the first tireless hand that reached for it. Then we should never have sent it with him. We sent it by him, not with him, Gandalf says. Fate takes the shortest road it knows. And now it has taken this one. Elrond turns toward the western windows, where the setting sun bleeds across the sky. What will she do? He asks. Gandalf does not answer immediately. Outside, the Bruinen murmurs, bearing away leaves and the faint scent of autumn. At that same hour, in the Golden Wood, Galadriel stands alone at the mirror, the ring cold and heavy on her hand. She has not yet worn it openly. It hangs on its chain, a separate circle of power from Nenya. She senses instinctively that to place it upon her finger is to cross another threshold. But if she is to wield this, thresholds must be crossed. She leans over the still water. "Show me Dol Guldur," she whispers. The mirror clouds, then clears. The ruined fortress crouches on its hill like a spider. Black trees thrash in a wind that does not touch the golden malin around her. Orcs move behind broken walls. Pale shapes drift in the shadows. Fell spirits drawn to the old evil like flies to decay. She does not simply watch. She reaches. It is a tentative testing at first, an extending of her will through the latent pathways the One Ring opens. Her thought brushes cold stone, damp forest, the crawling minds of lesser creatures. She feels their hunger and their fear. With sudden, almost contemptuous ease, she shuts their eyes. Torch flames gutter and go out. The orcs stagger, clutching at their heads. To them it is as if the world has blinked. One moment, the muttering and stink of their fellows. The next, a smothering silence inside their skulls. Then, fire. White light blossoms in the heart of Dol Guldur, not from any natural source, but from the convergence of her wrath and the ring's bound power. From afar, elves on the borders of Mirkwood see the tower glow as if lit from within, its cracks blazing. The scream that follows has no throat. It is the raw protest of a place steeped in malice being scrubbed by a will that will no longer tolerate its stain. Thunder rolls without clouds. When the light fades, Dol Guldur is not wholly gone. Stones still stand, blackened and cracked, but the malign presence that nested there has been scoured. The shadows slink back, wounded. In Minas Tirith, Denethor stands from his chair with a jerk, knocking over a goblet. Red wine spills down the white marble like blood. "What now?" he breathes. Ministers murmur. Guards shift uncertainly. No one has seen what he has seen in the secret chamber below. No one has felt the world quiver as some entrenched darkness is abruptly uprooted. He dares not look again into the Palantir just yet. Above the scattered orcs in the ruins of Dol Guldur, an unseen gaze falls. It is harsher than sun, more precise than any blade. It weighs them and finds them wanting. They do not know why they crawl away like beaten dogs. In Mordor, Sauron snarls. So, she learns quickly her act at Dol Guldur is both a victory and a declaration. No more testing then. No more waiting for the last pieces to slide into place before unfurling his strength. The game is open. He sends wordless commands down his own dark channels, summoning the Nazgul, hastening the forging of more arms, urging his lieutenants to move faster. The assault on Gondor, on Rohan, on all the freestanding pillars of the West must come sooner. There is another change he feels keenly. The lines between him and the Nine have become strangely tangled. He presses his will upon them, expecting the usual cringing obedience. Instead, he feels resistance, not from the wraiths themselves, who are utterly his, but from some interference woven through the fabric of their rings. Galadriel has not yet fully mastered the deep links between the One and its servants, but simply by claiming the mastering, she has altered the balance. The Nazgul are pulled between two lords. They keen in confusion, invisible wings beating at the air above Minas Morgul. The Witch King lifts his hooded head, feeling for the first time in centuries something like disorientation. He does not know the source of this second call. He knows only that another will, white and cold, brushes against his and recoils from what remains of his mind like a hand from a flame. Far away, in Lorien, Galadriel draws back from that contact with a shudder. She has glimpsed the abyss into which men can fall. She does not look long. Her thoughts turn instead to the living. Messengers ride from Lorien like bright arrows, bearing sealed letters to Rivendell, to Thranduil in the north, to Círdan by the sea. Her words are simple and uncompromising. The time of fating is at an end. With the ring reclaimed, the age need not pass wholly to men. The Eldar can still stand at the helm of history, but they must stand together. Elrond receives her letter with a heart full of conflicting tides. The script is familiar, the hand of an old friend, an older rival. Her arguments are flawless, her foresight keen. He reads aloud Gandalf's name where she has written it, inviting the wizard's council. Yet her tone is not that of a petitioner. It is the tone of one already building. I call upon you, Elrond Paradhel, she writes, not as a lord in retreat, but as the son of Arundel, as one whose veins hold still the fire that once sailed a Silmaril into the west. Help me shape an age where such deeds are not footnotes, but foundations. Elrond folds the letter slowly. What will you do? Gandalf asks. Elrond looks out over Rivendell at the soft mist rising from the falls, at the bright laughter of elven children who do not yet know how narrow their futures have always been. I will go to her, he says at last. If I remain here, the choice becomes hers alone. That is too much power for any one heart. And the ring, if she has truly bent it to her will, perhaps together we can steer its force toward healing. And if it has bent her? Gandalf's voice is very soft. Elrond does not answer. He begins to make his preparations. Meanwhile, the Fellowship's path breaks asunder in far different ways than in the Red Book. On the shores of Nen Hithol, the Argonath watch as small boats draw near. The company is frayed. Strains between Boromir and Aragorn have grown sharper, not dulled, by the loss of the ring to another. To Boromir, it is insult compounded. The fate of my people was in our grasp, he hisses one night to Aragorn, away from the hobbit's ears. With that weapon, Gondor could have driven back Mordor. Now it sits on the hand of your kin's elder ally, far to the west. While we bleed, do you mistrust Galadriel so greatly? Aragorn replies. Would you prefer to see it in the hand of Saruman or Sauron? I would prefer it in the hand of men, Boromir snaps. Of those who actually stand on the line. Men stood at the line and failed. Aragorn's voice hardens, a flintage showing. Do not speak to me of records, son of Denethor. I have walked as a shadow in your lands, while your father looked east and saw nothing until it was nearly too late. They break apart, breathing hard, old wounds and fresh mistrust between them. There is no ring to tempt Boromir into madness beside the falls of Rauros. Yet resentment is its own poison. He still tries to take something when the orcs from the east and Isengard converge upon the Fellowship by the river. The chaos is as sudden and brutal as before. Arrows hiss among the trees. Merry and Pippin scatter, small forms darting through underbrush. Boromir blows the horn of Gondor, its note ringing against the cliffs. He fights like a man trying to atone for an argument he cannot take back. 3 orcs fall to his first wild sweep, their black blood spattering his face. He sees Merry stumble, Pippin cry out, a Uruk looming over them with blade raised. In canon, his last stand is a shield around those 2 small friends. Here, a sliver of thought wedges itself between action and instinct. If I seize one of them, if I drag them back to Minas Tirith as proof that I could deliver something the wise could not. His hand snatches at Pippin's arm, hauling the hobbit behind him. For one instant, Pippin is shielded, then an arrow thuds into Boromir's chest. Not the volley that fells him piece by piece, but one brutal, well-aimed shot from a black-fletched bow. Lurtz, chief of Ugluk's band, snarls in satisfaction. Boromir staggers. Pippin shrieks. Merry rushes forward, striking wildly at the Uruk with a desperate courage that slices only empty air. The second arrow takes Boromir in the shoulder. He drops to one knee. There is a third arrow coming that he will never see. Aragorn arrives too late. He carves through orcs with a fury that leaves no room for anything else. When at last Lurtz falls, his head rolling into the ferns, the damage is done. Boromir is alive but broken, the Uruk-hai scattering with their prizes. Merry and Pippin are both gone. He clutches Aragorn's arm, coughing blood. They took them, he rasps. Both. You fought, Aragorn says, voice ragged. You did what you could. Boromir laughs, a harsh rattling sound. I tried to take, even at the end. He gasps. First the ring, then proof. Gondor's honor. Mine. He turns his face toward the river, toward lands he will not see again. Tell my father I tried, he manages, and his hand falls slack. Aragorn closes the man's eyes, grief a hard knot in his throat. There is no consoling tale to tell here of absolute sacrificial valor. Boromir dies in a tangle of motives, some noble, some not. It is that tangle that will haunt Aragorn along strange roads. He makes a choice. Without the ring to chase and without the orcs carrying it, there is no desperate need to abandon captives in favor of world saving. The scale shifts. We go after them, he tells Legolas and Gimli. Those 2 will not be left to torment while I yet live. And Frodo? Legolas asks quietly. Sam? Aragorn closes his eyes for a moment, seeing in memory the hobbit's drawn face, the gardener's fierce loyalty. I think their path lies elsewhere now, he says. Galadriel has taken their doom onto her own hand. We must attend to ours. In truth, Frodo and Sam have already made their choice. Without the ring, Frodo is still restless, pulled. He feels responsible in a new, bitter way. He gave away the thing that might have doomed or saved them all. We can't go home, can we, Sam? He says one gray morning as they sit by a trickling stream somewhere west of the Anduin. Not yet. Not while someone else's war is being fought because of us. Sam, who would very much like to go home, looks at his master's tired face and says, No, Mr. Frodo, I don't reckon we can. They turn their feet eastward anyway, not toward the heart of Mordor, but toward the fringes of battle they know must come. 2 hobbits, without a ring but with stubborn hearts, walking into a world that no longer has a simple place for them. They will cross paths with the great events yet. They just won't be carrying the fire that started them. In Lorien, the fire is beginning to blaze. Elrond arrives beneath the golden boughs with a company of Imladris' finest. The meeting between him and Galadriel is not a council of equals in mood, though they are matched in lore and lineage. Galadriel stands taller now, if that is possible. She seems at once closer and farther, her gaze both piercing and distant, as if she is listening to voices behind every word spoken to her. "Elrond," she says, and there is genuine warmth in her tone. Old memories pass between them. The White Council, the first rising of Sauron after his long sleep, battles fought side by side in armor now rusted or dust. "Galadriel," he replies, and bows just enough. They walk together through silent glades, Gandalf and the other elves trailing behind at a respectful distance. "You have bound yourself to it," Elrond says. "Once they are alone in truth." "I have," she answers. "Why?" She pauses beneath a great malern, the golden leaves drifting around her like slowly falling stars. "Do you remember the first time you saw the sea?" she asks instead. Elrond blinks, wrong-footed. "Yes," he says slowly, "at the mouths of Sirion. It was vast, beautiful, frightening. And you were half Elven," Galadriel says, "with the choice of worlds laid upon you like a burden and a gift. You chose to remain. It did not feel like much of a choice. My heart lay with the people who needed me." Galadriel looks at him, something like approval in her eyes. "I have always known the same," she says. "Westward lies absolution, forgiveness, oblivion, forgetfulness. Call it what you will. But my heart has never turned from Middle-earth. I have carried its sorrows since before your line was thought of. I have seen beauty trampled, remade, rebuilt, then trampled again." Her hand lifts, and the ring glints on its chain. "This," she says, "is an abomination. It is also the only tool with reach enough to redraw the pattern. If I set it aside, some other will take it up, or Sauron will reclaim it, and the end will be as we have long expected: darkness, followed eventually by a dim new rising, and again, cycles of ruin. You cannot mend Arda with the weapon that marred it," Elrond says. "Perhaps not," Galadriel answers, "but I can press my hand against some of the wounds long enough for new skin to grow." Elrond's gaze goes to Nenya on her finger. "What of that?" he asks. "The elven rings were made without Sauron's hand. They preserve, they do not rule. And preservation alone has turned to another kind of cruelty," Galadriel says, voice sharpening. "We have made pockets of timelessness while the world outside them burns. Lorien, Rivendell, Mithlond, beautiful shells with crumbling cores. Our people fade. The men around us die too soon, or fall into shadow, or are crushed between powers they do not understand." She turns fully to him. "With Nenya and the others, we have built havens. With the one, we can build order." Elrond hesitates. The arguments are seductive as all good lies are, or perhaps they are not lies, but truths framed in a dangerous light. "And what of men?" he presses. "What of their brief lives, their hunger to build for themselves? Will you chain them to our designs forever, that the world remain as you think it ought?" "I will give them peace," Galadriel says. "The chance to build without their work, being washed away every few generations by war and dark lords. Will I guide? Yes. Will I forbid them from sawing off the branch they sit on? Also, yes." Gandalf, listening from a little distance, feels an old chill creep into his bones. He has heard words like these before, in a tongue long dead, from a being who also meant, in his own twisted way, to order the world. Yet there is a fundamental difference. Sauron loved control for its own sake. He delighted in subjugation. Galadriel loves beauty. She loves harmony. She abhors waste and ugliness. The danger lies in that love becoming so absolute that anything that opposes it seems an excrescence to be cleansed. "Will you yield the ring to a council?" Elrond asks. To be steered by many minds, not just one? Galadriel's laughter is soft and almost kind. You know the answer before you ask, she says. To pass it from hand to hand is to invite indecision, division, and to lure Sauron into picking us off. We have seen what councils accomplish. They delay, they argue, they compromise where no compromise is possible. Her hand closes over the ring. This I will bear, she says. If you trust me, stand beside me. If you do not, stand aside, but do not stand against me. We have no time for kinstrife. The word hangs between them like returning ghosts. Memories of Alqualonde, of ships and blood on starlit waves. Elrond looks at her for a long, long moment. At least promise me this, he says at last, that once Sauron is overthrown, once the immediate peril is past, you will set the ring aside. You will let the world find its own balance. Galadriel is still. In her mind, she sees a realm of gleaming cities and deep, inviolate forests, of clean rivers and unspoiled shores. She sees elf and man and dwarf walking without fear of orc or balrog. She sees centuries of peace, symmetry, order. She also sees herself letting it go. That image seems gray. I promise, she says anyway. The words are carefully chosen. I will consider that choice when the time comes. It is enough to keep Elrond close, if not wholly at peace. Others are less restrained. In Isengard, Saruman stands at the summit of Orthanc, watching the plumes of smoke from distant forges smudge the sky. So, he murmurs, white robes stirring in the mountain wind. The Lady of the Golden Wood takes up the ruling ring. How perfectly predictable. The Eldar never could resist one more chance to shape the world. He has already begun his own treachery, of course, the breeding of the Uruk-hai, the felling of Fangorn's edges, the subtle bartering with Mordor through the Palantir. Yet, Galadriel's move forces him to accelerate. He had intended to be the one who seized the ring when the little halfling stumbled at last. Now that route is closed. He must find another. Sauron's neck strokes fall hard and fast. Osgiliath is assaulted earlier than in the Red Book, shockingly early. The Nazgul dart overhead as if drawn by two magnets at once, their cries dissonant. One swoops low over the river, talons scraping at unseen threads before jerking upward again. Faramir holds the ruined city as long as he can, his men dying in droves. The presence of the ring somewhere in the west is a background thunder in his skull, though he does not know its source. He only knows that the air tastes charged, like a storm that never quite breaks. When at last Denethor commands retreat, Osgiliath falls not with a single crushing assault, but by erosion. The orcs flood in, unchecked by any overwhelming counterstrike from a queenly hand. Galadriel is watching, but she is not yet ready to reveal all her strength against Mordor. She tests, she prods, she harasses his supply lines with sudden flare-ups of will that send wagons tumbling and bridges cracking. Sauron learns from each. So does she. In Rohan, Wormtongue's whispers have longer to work, for no desperate plea from Gandalf arrives as early to unmask him. Theoden droops on his throne, a puppet king in a hall that smells of old smoke and despair. Into this Cimmerian landscape walks Aragorn, with Legolas and Gimli at his shoulders, still tracking the Uruk-hai, who took Merry and Pippin. Their hunt leads them not only to the edges of Fangorn and the awakening Ents, but into the heart of the Horse Lord's crisis. Who are you to ride so boldly into our land? Eomer demands, hand on hilt, eyes scanning Aragorn's weather-beaten face, his mismatched company. A friend of Rohan, Aragorn answers, voice carrying the authority of long wandering under many names. and of Gondor, though I claim neither crown nor seat. I hunt enemies of both. Their exchange is pithy, edged, and when they at last clasp forearms, it is a union not just of needs, but of frustrations. Both are men constrained by older, weaker hands. The Ents still rise, their wrath against Isengard no less, for the altered paths of Ring and hobbits. Merry and Pippin's capture ends in much the same wondrous chaos, twig and leaf and marching root tearing Saruman's designs asunder. Only this time, as Orthanc is flooded and the wizard's pride drowns in his own hubris, another presence reaches into his dark stone. Galadriel touches the palantir of Orthanc. She does not seize it yet. She merely lays a gentle, inexorable hand upon it, like a queen resting her fingers on a rebellious vassal's shoulder. Through it, she tastes Saruman's recent dialogues with Mordor, the flavors of deceit and bargaining. She reads the half-spoken promises, the shared plans. Curanir, she says into the chamber where he cowers. Her voice emerges from no visible mouth, echoing from the very walls. Saruman starts, whirling, eyes wild. "Lady of Light," he spits, "what right have you to meddle in the councils of the Istari? The same right you claimed when you fashioned armies in secret and plotted with the enemy," Galadriel replies. "You were sent to aid this world, not to vie for its dominion." "Spare me your virtue," Saruman snarls. "You wear Isildur's bane upon your hand. Do not pretend you are guided only by the Valar's sweet breath." Galadriel's silence stretches. "You look east and see only a rival," she says at last. "I look and see a wound. You had wisdom enough once to know the difference." "Wisdom?" He laughs bitterly. "I have more of it now than ever, and it has taught me that without strength, wisdom is dust. You, too, have learned that, or you would not clutch that ring like a babe at its mother's breast. He expects anger, or at least heated denial. What he receives is colder. Curanir the Wise is dead," she says. "Only Saruman of many colors remains, and his shades are all the same. Stay in your tower and rot if you will. The world will be mended without you. The connection severs. The palantir grows suddenly heavy and inert in Saruman's hands. He realizes with a sick twist that the web of will around these stones has changed. Where once there were only two great nodes, Mordor and Orthanc, there is now a third, westward, bright and merciless. "Fool woman," he breathes. "Fool Maya. You will build a prison no less complete than Sauron's." Yet some part of him is afraid he is wrong. In Edoras, Gandalf finally arrives, later than in the Red Book, but in time enough to make a difference. His confrontation with Theoden has more weight now, for the king has sunk deeper into Wormtongue's slime. "Too long have you sat in the shadows, son of Thengel," Gandalf says, his staff ringing on the stone. "While others shape the age around you, it is not just Sauron he means. It is Galadriel, Elrond, any who would stake a claim on the pattern of years." Theoden stirs like an old tree in a late storm. "Who am I to stand against such powers?" he rasps. "I am but a man with failing limbs and a house that crumbles." "You are a king," Gandalf says, "and kings are precisely what this new world will lack if you yield your staff to every hand that reaches." Theoden's eyes clear, fury and shame battling in them. "I will not be a puppet," he growls. "Not for Saruman, nor for any fairy queen in her forest." He does not yet name Galadriel an enemy, but he feels the tug of her influence sweeping across the map, and it piques his old pride. Rohan rides to war. At the same time, Galadriel prepares her own march. Elven companies gather in Lorien and Rivendell, armor gleaming like moonlight on water. Banners long kept in vaults are unfurled, the silver harp, the white ship, the golden tree. No elf has ridden to war in such numbers since the last alliance. Men watch from hiding places near borders, mouths open. These are their old stories come to life, the high elves, terrible and fair, passing like a rolling wave. Galadriel stands at their head. When at last she slides the ring onto her finger, fully, openly, the world's breath catches again. For a moment, her shape blurs, vast and luminous, her hair a white flame, her eyes bottomless. The air around her snaps, bending light, bending will. In Mordor, the eye flares wide. Now, their clash is no longer distant, a tug-of-war of preparation. It is direct. On the field of battle before the Black Gate, the host of the West gathers much as in the Red Book, Rohan with its banners, Gondor with its silver tree, elves standing like living statues among them. But there is a new axis to their courage. They do not march as a forlorn hope, buying time for a desperate hobbit friend in a poisoned land. They march under a general whose power they can feel, who stands at the forefront, white light coiling about her like a visible resolve. "Look," a young soldier of Gondor whispers, nudging his comrade. "Is that Galadriel?" the older man answers, awe and a little fear in his voice. "The Lady of the Golden Wood." Stories have always painted her distant, perilous. To see her is like seeing a legend stride out of the page. She raises her hand. Every elf lifts a bow. Arrows blaze with inner light as her will runs along them, sharpening, steadying. When she drops her hand, the first volley arcs into the sky like a rain of tiny stars. Orcs scream as they fall, each shaft finding a gap in armor, an exposed throat, a leader's sneering face. Galadriel feels each impact as a tiny resonance. It is disturbingly easy to guide death at this scale. She forces herself to remember every life behind each arrow on both sides. That act of remembrance becomes its own kind of discipline, a wall between necessary violence and Sauron's unthinking cruelty. Sauron does not care whom he kills. She, at least, will care. For now, the Black Gate opens and his army pours forth. The battle that follows is a storm of steel and hoof and a constant humming undercurrent of will. There are moments when individual heroism breaks through. Éomer rallying a broken line, Legolas and Gimli turning back to back among swirling foes, Faramir leading a charge that smashes into a wedge of trolls. But always in the midst of chaos, there is Galadriel. When a Nazgul dives, its black steed shrieking, she lifts her gaze and meets its empty eyes. The ring on her finger pulses. For an instant, the wraith chokes, its invisible form yanked between two orders, Sauron's command to strike, Galadriel's cold insistence to stop. The Witch King forces his will through the crackling bond, shrieking in a voice that rattles armor, "Obey me, Galadriel's thought is a spear." "You are already dead," she tells him. "Be gone." The Nazgul's mount crumples in mid-air, its tether to unlife cut. The wraith spins, flailing, before Sauron's power catches it and hurls it back toward Mordor like a falling star. Every such exchange taxes her. Every such victory emboldens her. The final confrontation is not at the lip of Orodruin, with a hobbit at the edge of ruin. It is here, in the no man's land between Black Gate and scarred plain, mind to mind, ring to ring. Sauron pours himself into the battle at last. The eye is no longer just a symbol atop a tower. It is a burning presence that seems to press upon every warrior's shoulders, urging fear, promising death. Some men drop their swords and flee, sanity buckling. Others tighten their grips because they can feel another presence pushing back, cool, stern, unyielding. Galadriel takes a single step forward, her feet not quite touching the churned, bloody earth. The ring on her finger flares bright enough to dim the sun. Anatar, she names Sauron, using the fair name he once bore, Maron, Gorthor, all the masks you wore to get us here. It ends now. His answer is a roar that splits the sky. He tries to crack her mind as he cracks so many others, battering with promises, threats, memories of failure. He shows her faces. Finrod, felled in darkness, Celebrian, broken by torment, countless nameless elves and men dying while she watched and could not turn the tide. You think you will be the one to break this wheel? He hisses. You, who have already failed so many? She could falter. She does not. Yes, she answers simply. She takes all that guilt, all that old sorrow, and she wraps it around her will like tempered steel. If she has failed before, all the more reason not to fail now. She pushes. The ring at her finger responds, not with gentleness, but with a fierce joy at being used to its capacity. It was never meant to be hidden, feared, shrunk from. It was meant to channel Amaya's full blaze. For a flickering moment, the two of them are back in Eregion, metaphorically. She, Celebrimbor, and the fair teacher who walked among the forges. Only now the forge is the world, and they are beating on each other. Stone splits, the foundations of Barad-dûr miles away groan. The tower has always been anchored more in will than in engineering. As that will is besieged, cracks race up its length like veins of frost. In the Samath Naur, deep beneath Orodruin's crust, the fire licks at old designs. The link between ring and mountain vibrates like a plucked string, discordant. Galadriel reaches along that connection. Sauron tries to stop her, to pull her back toward the host in front of the gate, to drag her attention to 100 smaller fires he might ignite. Panic, overreach, the temptation to preserve her army at any cost. She refuses to be scattered. Her thought goes down, into the cracks, into the molten heart. Be unmade, she whispers, not to the ring, but to its cradle. Mount Doom shudders, lava churns, pressure building. The vents that have carried Sauron's forge's exhalations for an age suddenly reverse, sucking in. Barad-dûr's great furnaces backfire, belching fire inward instead of out. Orcs scream as rivers of flame change course and race along new channels, carved at the speed of thought. Sauron feels the ground under him betray him. His scream this time is not of anger, but of something closer to fear. You cannot, he snarls into her mind. If you break that, you break your own foundation. The ring draws from that fire as much as from me. I know, Galadriel says. She has made her choice. She is no longer trying to keep everything. Peace, power, preservation, beauty. She is choosing. Light lances up from Orodruin's crown, blinding every eye that can see it. The mountain splits like a rotten tooth, its sides crumbling. Barad-dûr, robbed of its anchor, sways. On the battlefield, everyone feels it, a lurch, a drop, as if the world has missed a step. Sauron flings every remaining scrap of himself into resisting, clutching at the ring, at the Nazgûl, at the terrified minds of his servants. He tries to anchor himself in fear, in hatred. Galadriel burns those threads as they touch her. The ring on her finger grows unbearably hot. It is like holding a small star. Her hand smokes, flesh chars. She does not let go. You think I will spare myself, she says, and there is something wild in her now, something terrible and utterly beyond self-pity. You never understood. That is why you lost before Morgoth fell, and that is why you lose now. She breaks the last bond. Orodruin erupts. Barad-dûr comes down, not in a sudden clean collapse, but in a grinding, tearing descent. It spells unraveling, stones exploding outward. The eye flares wide, then narrows, then shrinks like a coal plunged into snow. Sauron's shriek tears across the plains and then fails, cut off as if someone has closed a door. The Nazgul vanish, their forms ripped away as the rings that bound them flare and disintegrate. On the field, orcs wail and flee, their masters will gone. Trolls stand dumbly, then topple. Silence, ragged and disbelieving, sweeps the warriors of the west. It is over, and on the blasted plain, in the midst of victorious, weeping, exhausted soldiers, Galadriel stands very still. The ring on her finger is dull now, cracked. Its surface, once perfect, is crazed like the drying bed of a lake. Hairline fractures run along the gold, glowing faintly. Her hand is ruined, skin blackened and peeling, but she does not look at it. She is listening. The one is not just an object of power. It is a crystallized fragment of Sauron's being, of his native force as a Maya. In severing him from it and from Mount Doom, she has not simply toppled a tyrant, she has annihilated most of what he was. There is a vacuum. Power, like nature, abhors a vacuum. Galadriel feels the raw, unshaped energy swirling, looking for somewhere to go. Into the earth, to cause earthquakes and storms for centuries. Into the fabric of the world, to warp chance and fate. Or into a vessel. She could let it dissipate. She could stand aside and watch the world tremble under its aftershocks for a long age, perhaps longer. Instead, with a calm that shocks even her, she reaches out and draws. The fractures in the ring flare bright, then dim, then flare again as the torrent pours into it, through it, into her. She becomes, for a moment, a conduit between the breaking of one dark will and the shaping of a new order. It is like standing in the light of the two trees again, and in the heart of a supernova, and at the bottom of the sundering sea, all at once. When it ends, she is on her knees. The battlefield is utterly still. Around her, men and elves and dwarves struggle to understand what they have seen. They know Sauron is gone. They can feel it in their bones, like a pressure lifted from behind the eyes. They do not see the subtler shift that has taken place inside the woman before them. Gandalf sees. He limps toward her through the wreckage, his staff a support more than a symbol now. His eyes search her face. "Galadriel," he says softly. She looks up at him. For the first time since she claimed the ring, there is something like vulnerability in her gaze. "It is done," she says. He hears the double meaning. Behind them, men lift swords and shout. Elves sing wordless, piercing notes. Somewhere, a Rohirrim sinks to his knees and laughs and sobs in the same breath. Hope roars up, wild and untidy. In Minas Tirith, they light every beacon, not in plea, but in joy. In Edoras, the golden hall rings with song. In the Shire, still green, still quiet, for no shadow ever directly touched it in this timeline, hobbits look up at a sky that seems just a little brighter and shrug, attributing it to weather. The shadow is gone, and yet, in the weeks and months that follow, something else takes its place. Not immediately. The immediate aftermath is relief, rebuilding, reunions. Aragorn is crowned king of Gondor and Arnor, his brow circled with a winged crown. Galadriel stands at the coronation, not as a distant watcher, but as a presence that bends the ceremony around her, whether anyone means for it to or not. He feels her eyes on him as he swears to uphold the laws of his realm. He feels something else, too, the subtle threads that already tie his kingdom to her designs. Elven advisors have begun to take up posts in Minas Tirith and other cities, offering their knowledge of agriculture, of medicine, of governance. On the surface, this is a blessing. Fields around the White City go from struggle to abundance in a few seasons under their guidance. Plagues that once ravaged villages are checked by new herbal lore. Roads are improved with techniques drawn from long-faded Numenor. The people love these changes. Why should they not? When emissaries from Lorien suggest standardizing weights and measures across Gondor and its allies so that trade may flow more smoothly, who among the merchants objects to fairness? When they propose a council of realms that will meet regularly to decide on shared defense and policy, who among the war-weary kings and stewards can refuse a chance to prevent the next catastrophe? Rohan joins proudly, insisting on terms that protect their traditions. Prince Imrahil of Dol Amroth speaks eloquently for coastal folk. Faramir, now steward under Aragorn, finds in the new assemblies a chance to curb his father's old isolation. Galadriel attends some of these councils in person. More often, her words come via letters, via trusted lieutenants, Elrond, Glorfindel, others who have chosen to remain and shape rather than depart. Her influence is almost always for stability, for harmony, for the easing of old grudges. When dwarves and elves clash over a particular mine or forest, her arbitration is firm but fair, reminding each of shared fights against darkness. When men squabble over borders, she reminds them, gently but unarguably, that the line between safety and chaos is maintained by their unity. "We must learn to behave as if the enemy might return tomorrow," she says in one famous address, given from a balcony of Minas Tirith to a square full of cheering, wary citizens. Not in fear, but in vigilance. Let no petty selfishness undo what so much blood has bought. The crowd roars approval. In that roaring, a little of something else is born, not love, which she has always commanded among her own, not awe, which has always followed the Eldar. Obedience. It begins with small things. A regional lord who ignores new standards on tax fairness finds trade with neighboring regions subtly slowed as caravans choose more cooperative roads. No one orders this. It is simply understood. A minor king who tries to raise an army without clearing it through the council finds his weapon shipments delayed, his training musters short of provisions. Again, no edict, merely a collective sense that unsupervised armies are a risk the world can no longer afford. At first, Aragorn welcomes this smoothing of old bumps. His reign is easier, less racked by baronial rebellions than history might have said. Then he begins to find that some decisions are made without him. They only decided on best practices. A well-meaning advisor tells him, setting a packet of scrolls on the table, so that all regions might benefit from Lorien's insight into flood control, into crop rotation. Aragorn looks down at the neat scripts, the diagrams of river-controlling dikes, of planting schedules coordinated across hundreds of miles. This is impressive, he admits, and yet, when did Gondor agree that every village must align its harvest festival to this calendar? We have ancient customs tied to these days, the advisor shrugs, embarrassed. It is only a suggestion, my lord. But who would ignore such wisdom? Who, indeed? He writes to Galadriel. Her reply, when it comes, is gracious, full of praise for his judgment and assurances that no elf will ever trample the rightful traditions of men. She also includes, in an unobtrusive addendum, a careful explanation of how aligning festivals to planting schedules can increase yield by a measurable amount. she is not wrong. That is the rub. In the Shire, Frodo returns at last, changed but less broken than in the Red Book. He has not carried the ring into the heart of fire. He has witnessed a queen bear that weight instead. His nightmares are of light, not of eyes and teeth, of Galadriel ablaze on a battlefield, of her face solitary beneath a sky without Sauron's taint. He writes of his journey as Bilbo did before him. His book tells of Bree and Rivendell, of Lorien's beauty before and after the claiming, of Mordor's fall seen from afar through rumor and song. Sam marries Rosie, tends his garden, raises children who know a world without a Dark Lord, yet even in the Shire, far from the halls of councils, change creeps. A traveling elf passes through Hobbiton one spring, bearing trinkets and tales. Among the trinkets is a small clear stone that, when placed on a windowsill, glows faintly if a storm is coming. That's mighty handy, Sam says, turning it over in his calloused hands. Lady Galadriel sends such gifts to many lands, the elf explains. Simple things, helps with planning, with safety. Very kind of her, Sam murmurs. The stone works. Word spreads. Other such devices find their way into markets, a box that keeps food from spoiling, a lamp that burns without oil, a toy that tells simple stories from far away when wound. None of them are dangerous, none of them are addictive, save in the way that any convenience is. Hobbits, being hobbits, grumble about changes and then use them gladly. Frodo sits at his desk, quill hovering above the page, thinking of power in tiny, homely shapes. It's not bad, what she's doing, he says to Sam one evening, watching children chase each other under a sky shot with unfamiliar, faintly shimmering lights, an unforeseen side effect, some say, of the great unmaking in the East. Not like Sauron. No one's being dragged off in chains. There's more to eat. Fewer orcs, more songs. Sam, who has spent the day helping coordinate a new Shire-wide planting schedule based on weather predictions that come via Galadriel's network, wipes his hands on his trousers. No, he agrees slowly, it ain't bad. Just feels like the world's got a bit smaller. Like there's someone watching the hedgerows, making sure the paths all go where she thinks they ought. He looks up at the stars. Not as bright as they once were somehow, though clearer. You trust her, Mr. Frodo? He asks. Frodo thinks of her standing above the mirror, hand closed on the ring. I trust that she loves this world, he says. I'm not sure I trust what love can turn into, given that much strength. Years pass. Elves do not leave in white ships. Círdan keeps his havens, but no great exodus sails into the west. The straight road remains unused by any mass departure. The Valar watch from beyond the sea, their counsels veiled from mortal and immortal alike. Some among the Eldar ache for their undying lands. They look west at sunset and feel the pull like a hook in the heart. Galadriel feels it too sometimes. On certain nights, when Lorien is still and the moon paints silver on every leaf, she takes off the ring and sets it on a stone before her. It lies there, cracked and dulled, yet humming with contained power. She imagines, very carefully, lifting it and hurling it into a deep pit, or breaking it under some unimaginable pressure, or simply walking away, leaving it to gather dust. She never does. The promised day when she would consider that choice comes and goes, indistinct. Sauron is gone. The immediate peril is past. Yet new justifications rise as quickly as old ones are fulfilled. The Haradrim, once freed from Sauron's influence, do not immediately embrace peace. Some continue raiding, clinging to old hatreds. In one southern city, a charismatic leader preaches that now is the time to strike at Gondor, while it adjusts to its new order. Galadriel hears of this through her networks. She watches, through palantary and scrying pools, the gathering of spears. She could let events unfold, trusting Gondor and its allies to meet this challenge as a test of their resilience. Instead, with a few whispered suggestions carried on the wind into the minds of wavering chieftains, with a sudden blight that strikes only the war leader's private grain stores, she undermines the rebellion before it marches. Another war averted, her supporters say, another choice made for others, whispers a quieter voice in her. In Rohan, Éomer rides out one day to find a strange circle of trees on a once empty hill. They are not native to that land. Their leaves are of a species more often found near Lorien. A rider points, nervous. "Magic, my king?" Éomer dismounts, touches the bark. "Help," he says. "They were planted to stop this hill from eroding into the river. Our own crofters asked for advice. The elves sent saplings." His hand rests on the trunk a moment longer than necessary. "Still," he adds, "it is one more piece of Rohan that is not entirely ours." He is not ungrateful. His people have enjoyed new veterinary techniques, new breeding insights, better armor designs that have saved many lives. He simply feels in his bones that something is subtly off balance. Aragorn, now long-crowned, feels it too. He and Galadriel meet less often in person as years pass, but when they do, their conversations are a dance of sharp argument and shared vision. "You have made Gondor flourish," she tells him once, strolling along the walls of Minas Tirith as the city gleams with new repairs and additions. "You have done what your fathers only dreamed of. With your help," he acknowledges, "with each other's." She corrects. He stops, hand on the stone. "Will there be a time," he asks, "when you will say, 'This is enough. Let men hold the reins from here'?" She looks out over the Pelennor, dotted now with new villages, with windmills of a design borrowed from distant lands. The sky is clearer, the threat of orc or warg almost mythic. "Would you have me withdraw and watch as your great-great-grandson squanders this in some petty power struggle?" she replies. "You know as well as I that men's memory is short. Already there are those who speak of Sauron as a story, not as a lived fear. If we never learn to govern ourselves without a hand on our shoulder," Aragorn says, "we will never truly grow. I am not asking you to vanish, only to ease your grip." My grip?" There is a faint chill in her voice. He meets her gaze without flinching. "You do not decree from a throne," he says. "You do not send soldiers to enforce your will. You are more subtle than that. But your preference always becomes consensus. Your disapproval always becomes difficulty." Her jaw tightens for an instant. "Would you prefer I had left the ring on a table at the end of the wall?" she asks. "Let anyone with enough hunger take it up?" There is no neutrality with such power. Someone must hold it or destroy it. I chose to hold and heal, not burn and leave scars. You chose rightly, he says. I honor you for it. I owe you my throne, my city, my world. That is not in question. What I ask is whether you can see the end of your task. She does not answer. They stand together in silence, two figures on a white wall, the wind tugging at hair and cloak. In Rivendell, which has become less a retreat and more a seat of ongoing governance, Elrond feels the weight of centuries settle in a new way. His children, Arwen, who chose mortality for Aragorn's sake, Elladan, and Elrohir, who linger between worlds, embody the tension of this age. They are half Elven in a world where the elves have refused to pass. Arwen grows older, gracefully, beautiful even as lines touch her face. To her subjects, she is a beloved queen. To Galadriel, she is a bridge, proof that men and elves can share not just policies, but blood and fate. Your grandchildren will inherit something stable, Galadriel tells Elrond one day, watching Arwen play with a dark-haired toddler in the gardens of Minas Tirith. They will not know the chaos we did. At what cost? Elrond asks. She sighs, almost impatient. Always the same question, she says, at the cost of some wildness, some spontaneity, some experiments that could have led to ruin. Is that so dear a price? He thinks of Arundel sailing west with a Silmaril on his brow, an insane, desperate plan that saved the world. You cannot predict which wildness will save you, he says. If you prune too closely, you may cut the branch that would have borne the fruit you need. Her eyes narrow slightly. And so we should let every weed grow, she replies, in hopes that one might someday bloom into a savior? You ask too much humility of a people who have watched their gardens trampled for an age. There it is, humility, the thing she cannot quite embrace, not now, not with this much proof of her efficacy arrayed before her, for the truth is brutally simple. Middle-earth under Galadriel's guidance does, in many ways, thrive. There are fewer wars, fewer famines, fewer plagues. Trade flows easily. Knowledge is shared rather than hoarded in isolated towers. Dwarves and elves do come to blows now and then, but no great slaughter follows, for an external, nearly unassailable authority steps in. Children grow up without learning to fear a dark land in the east, yet unease persists, thin but pervasive, like a hairline crack under perfect glaze. In a small village in Harad, a boy stares at the stars and dreams of building a fleet to sail around the world beyond known maps. When he is older and seeks resources for such a mad venture, he finds every door politely closed. Such risks are not wise, elders tell him. We have peace. Why stir the waters? In Dale, a young woman discovers a new method of smelting that could produce metals of unprecedented strength, but it requires deeper mining under a mountain where old evils might sleep. Her king, advised by an elven counselor, forbids it. The lady has observed, the counselor says gently, that disturbing old deeps often brings darkness. Better to work with what we have. In the Shire, a restless Took's granddaughter organizes an expedition to swim out to the horizon of their western sea on a dare. A storm rises out of a clear sky, sudden and unseasonal, scattering their boats. They all survive, dragged back by anxious rescuers. Strange, older hobbits murmur, we haven't had weather like that in years. Sam, standing on the shore, looks at the clouds, at the odd, shimmering patterns beyond them that scholars now call the veiling, a side effect of Galadriel's shaping of the post-Sauron energies. He wonders. In Lorien, Galadriel walks alone. The forest has changed. It is no longer a preserved bubble of fading glory. It has grown in new directions. Trees of unfamiliar leaf and bark, flowers from far lands thriving under carefully moderated light. Streams diverted centuries ago to maintain a precise balance of moisture still run clear. If she lifts her hand, she can feel instantly the soil condition in a distant glade, the health of a sapling in a border copse. It would be so easy to correct any imbalance. She closes her fingers. There are rumors in distant taverns and midnight gatherings of those who resist, not dark lords or petty tyrants, but philosophers, poets, small kings who feel suffocated. In one mountain hold, a dwarf lord declares that his people will, for a generation, try doing things entirely their own way. No elven advisors, no consultation with the council, no magical weatherstones. His minds flood in an unprecedented storm. None are killed, for the flood comes at a conveniently empty hour, but the message is felt. Coincidence, some say. Correction, others mutter, there is no proof. Galadriel does not sit with a ledger, ticking off rebellions to be punished. She does not think of herself as cruel when she nudges a storm. It is because she has calculated a dozen downstream effects and decided that averting a greater disaster requires a small one now. When she gently clouds the mind of a would-be warlord with doubts and second thoughts, it is because she sees, with the ring's enhanced perception, the rivers of blood that would otherwise flow. She saves far more than she harms. The world is safer, kinder, more predictable, and smaller. On a night, many years after Sauron's fall, Frodo dreams. In his dream, he stands once more on the Flet in Lorien, looking out over silver and gold. Galadriel is there, as she was, as she is, as she will be. Tall, bright, terrifyingly focused. "You won," he says. She looks at him, and in this dream sight, without the filters of reverence or fear, he sees the weight in her gaze. "Did I?" she asks. He gestures vaguely, taking in an invisible map. The prosperous lands, the quiet borders, the neat, crisscrossing lines of trade and treaty. "There's no dark lord," he says. "No terrible eye in the sky. The Shire's safe. People have enough to eat. My nephews don't know what war smells like. That counts for something. It counts for much," she agrees. "I would do it again." He believes her. He also believes she cannot imagine not doing it again. If another Sauron were to somehow rise. He hesitates, then asks the question that has sat in the back of his mind for years. "Could you destroy it now?" Her hand goes to the ring unconsciously in the dream, as it often does in waking life. The gold gleams, scarred but solid. "Yes," she says after a moment. The greater part of Sauron bound within it is gone. Its destruction would not break the world as it might have then. It would hurt. There would be upheaval. But it could be done. And will you? She looks away. "There is still so much to mend," she says. "Mistakes to correct. Seeds to plant. Systems to solidify so they will not fall apart when I am gone." "Will you ever be gone?" Frodo asks. In the dream, her face is unreadable. He wakes with his heart pounding, the taste of Malorn honey on his tongue. Outside, the Shire is quiet. A breeze stirs the curtains. Somewhere, a child laughs in its sleep. He goes to the window and looks up. The stars, those that can be seen through the veiling, are steady. He imagines, for a wild instant, calling out to Varda, to any of the powers beyond the sea, asking them to judge this new queen who has made herself a wall between them and the mortal world. He does not. He is a hobbit. He makes tea. In the havens, Círdan stands on a dock that has not seen a great ship sail in an age. The sea smells the same, salt, kelp, the faint tang of distant storms. He has built ships that could take them still, if they chose. The straight road has not closed, so far as he can tell. No one comes. No summons arrives from the west. No eagle bears messages. No dreams stir him at night with calls to depart. Perhaps the Valar are content to let this play out. Perhaps they are simply silent. Beside Círdan, Mithrandir leans on his staff, beard ruffled by the wind. "You could go," the elf says quietly. "You have earned your rest more than any." Gandalf smiles faintly. "And leave you all to this interesting experiment?" he replies. "I think not. Besides, I am not wholly of them anymore, nor wholly of here. I am a hinge." He looks westward, then east, toward the lands where Galadriel's influence hums like a low, constant chord. "Do you think she will ever set it down?" Círdan asks. Gandalf is a long time answering, "I think she believes she might someday," he says. "And I think that with each passing year, the number of things she feels she must fix grows, not shrinks. You doubt her, I doubt everyone," Gandalf says gently, "myself most of all. But I know this, no chain, however kindly its maker, sits easy forever. They fall silent, listening to the sea." In Minas Tirith, Aragorn sits alone in a high room, the city murmuring far below. Elisar Telcontar, king of the reunited realm, hero of the War of the Ring that was not, father, husband, man. On the table before him lies a ring, not the one that remains on Galadriel's hand, far away. This is a simple band of mithril, a gift from an elf smith in Rivendell, enchanted only to never tarnish. It was given to him as a symbol of alliance between men and elves. He rolls it between thumb and forefinger, watching the metal catch the candlelight. He thinks of his people, of their flourishing, of the schools and libraries that have sprung up under elven guidance. He thinks of the times he has bucked that guidance. Small, careful rebellions, like allowing a southern harbor to develop its own ship designs despite stern warnings about instability. He thinks of Galadriel's face when she learned of those, not angry, disappointed. He has withstood orc blades and Nazgul screams. He finds that he shrinks just a little from that disappointment. He wonders how many others do too. Arwen enters, quiet as a sigh, and lays a hand on his shoulder. "You are restless," she says. "I am wondering," he replies, "if the age of men has truly begun, or if we are simply tenant kings living in a house whose foundations we do not fully own." She kisses his temple. "You are no tenant," she says. "You are loved, respected. You have more freedom than many kings before you. I also have more guidance," he says dryly. Her eyes soften. "Without it, you might have failed," she says. "Would you trade your people's safety for a rawer, riskier freedom?" He looks at her, at the lines softly creasing around eyes that still hold starlight. "If I say yes," he murmurs, "am I saying it for them or for myself?" She does not answer. In Lorien, Galadriel sits by the mirror again. She has reshaped the world according to her best lights. She has saved innumerable lives, preserved beauty, fostered wisdom. She has also woven a web so fine that most do not see it, a net of influence from which it is hard to entirely escape. She did not set out to do harm. She still does not think of herself as doing harm. "No orc pits," she says aloud, "to no one, no dark tower, no black gate." Is that not worth some curbed ambition? Some slowed hunger? Her reflection in the water is both ageless and ancient. The ring on her hand glows faintly, a steady heartbeat. She closes her eyes. For a brief, fragile moment, she imagines taking it off and dropping it into the mirror's depths, watching it sink, its light dwindling. She imagines the sudden quiet in her mind, the stripping away of 1,000 perceptions, the narrowing of her awareness to the mere circles of her own body, her own forest. She imagines, with a pang like loss, how blind she would feel. She opens her eyes. The ring is still on her finger. Outside, the forest of Lorien hums with a subtle, constant attention. Leaves turn precisely to catch the afternoon sun. Streams run clear along their appointed courses. Everywhere in Middle-earth, children sleep safer than they would have if the ring had been destroyed in fire. Fewer monsters stalk their dreams. Fewer fathers and mothers fail to return from war. In the high tower of Minas Tirith, a king who was once a ranger stands at his window and watches the stars through a faint, shimmering veil. In the golden wood, its leaves eternally on the cusp of autumn, an elven queen sits very still, her hand resting lightly on a band of cracked gold that glows and never quite cools.